I have subsequently been teaching from stage the McDonald's principle. If you want to scale your business, you have choices. Choice number one, you have ordinary systems and processes, and therefore you require extraordinary humans, unicorns to get it done. Or you can build extraordinary systems and processes so that even ordinary people can do it. Now, I'm not a proponent of encouraging my clients to hire ordinary salespeople. What I am saying is, if you have an extraordinary culture, an extraordinary playbook, extraordinary role practice every week, then you go out and you hire the best people you can afford.
This is the Entrepreneurs United podcast with your hosts, John St. Pierre and Rich Hoffmann.
Hey entrepreneurs, today we're sitting down with Morné Smit. He's the founder and CEO of Emerse Sales. Morné, we have a similar background in the construction industry, commercial construction, or industry-ish, not exactly the same. But I want you to talk to our audience about the time where you took that company from $18 million in sales to $180 million in sales, which is 10x if you do the math.
Yeah.
Within 5 years. Bring me back to that point where you're at $18 million and you're looking, going, I want to grow this. Bring us back to that moment. Where were you? What were you doing? And what was the light bulb trigger that went off?
Sure thing. First of all, thanks so much, guys, for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to sit down and chat about a topic that's kind of near and dear to my heart, which is really building predictable revenue engines. We're going to talk a lot about sales, but I think it's probably fair to say that there are going to be people listening to this that don't have a sales team. But I think first and foremost, I'm a big believer that all businesses, regardless of size, regardless of whether you're B2C, B2B, B2G, needs to do four things, right? Find it, win it, grow it, keep it. So in that context, this goes back to probably 2011, 2012. I just joined an office design and build company. So effectively, we would take empty office buildings that had either just been built out of the ground or had been stripped down back to the concrete shell. And then we would be hired to create commercial office spaces on the various floors for businesses of all industries. Now, when I joined that business, I was first year, the owner of the company made a deal with me and said, I need you on the sales floor for a year. I want to see if you can do it, right? Show me that you know how to get clients across the line, how to get projects across the line. And then all being well and you winning over the hearts and minds of the team, we'll move you into a sales director, chief revenue officer role. So that's what's happened. And really, I would first and foremost attribute the stratospheric growth of that business to having an incredible leadership team. One of the things that will come up, I'm sure, today is that sales from a business owner's perspective isn't just a skill, it's an ecosystem. And as an ecosystem, that means that sales doesn't live on its own. It's not a function that can prosper in the absence of everything else. So we had an incredible leadership team in that business. Everybody knew their job, and sales was really supported through the integration with other departments. I think the few kind of key moments that really helped us to achieve that kind of growth was firstly recognizing that heroics of individuals doesn't scale. We were fortunate enough to have some very talented people in that business, but I think there's going to be people that listen to this podcast today that are going to say, you know what, I have some good salespeople, but even though they make me money, they're not scalable, they're not replicable. There's probably going to be founders, owners of companies that are thinking, I'm still the best salesperson in my business. And one of the things that I will give credit to the owner of that company is that he had a systems mindset and he encouraged me to do the same on the revenue side of the business. So we would constantly be asking ourselves the question every week, what's worked and what hasn't? Can we create a playbook that can be followed by others? I have subsequently been teaching from stage the McDonald's principle. If you want to scale your business, you have choices. Choice number one, you have ordinary systems and processes, and therefore you require extraordinary humans, unicorns to get it done. Or you can build extraordinary systems and processes so that even ordinary people can do it. Now, I'm not a proponent of encouraging my clients to hire ordinary salespeople. What I am saying is, if you have an extraordinary culture, an extraordinary playbook, extraordinary role practice every week, then you go out and you hire the best people you can afford. And when you put those two things together, that's when you get a rocket ship to the moon. And that's exactly what we built. We built this extraordinary sales culture, extraordinary playbook, extraordinary systems and processes, great habits every week, and then went and hired the best people we could afford and then just ran that engine. If I had to summarize that in a nutshell, we basically did what winning sports teams have been screaming at us for years we should do with our sales teams. Unless you have unlimited money, you buy the best players that you can afford, but then you create an ecosystem to get the best out of them. And that's what I did, eventually building 8 different sales teams within that business, a marketing department, a great business development engine. And then we just ran that engine really hard for about 5 years. And as you mentioned, we were fortunate enough, without any external funding, without any acquisitions, to do a 10x on that business right before I started my current company, Emerse Sales.
What are the elements of a sales ecosystem?
The doctrine that we've created, Rich, over the last kind of 9 years, it took us about 5.5 years to figure it out. I got obsessed really early in this business with what does it really take to create predictable, repeatable, scalable sales? Not the kind of sales, again, where we're founder dependent, but how do we get replicability and predictability? And that ecosystem is, for me, 6 things. Number 1, it's excellence in sales leadership. And what that means in a nutshell is creating clarity for your people, making it so that they only worry about things they can control. They should not spend a minute of their time worrying about things they can't control. And what can they control? Activities, behaviors, and habits. That's it. The second spoke of the wheel, if you will, of the 6 things is management. Sales management is probably the hardest thing to get right in any organization. And a lot of organizations, we see player coaches, right? We see founder, manager, entrepreneur, CEO also managing the sales team or still being involved in the sales side of the business, or best salesperson gets promoted to sales manager. And statistically, we know that fails about 82% of the time. So sales management is an exceptionally important part of that ecosystem. The talent pool is the third one. And here we're looking for right people, right seats. That means not just energetic people, not just well-spoken, not just intelligent, not just hardworking, but the right profile in the right seat. The fourth one is enablement. How do we enable our people through systems, processes, playbooks, now the deployment of AI, so that they can answer one key question at any stage of the sales process? And that is, what is the best thing to do now? How do I make it so my people instantly know the answer to that question without having to ask the line manager? The fifth part of the ecosystem is integration. And that's what I mentioned before when I said we had a great leadership team at that last business. Sales is not an island. If sales is disconnected from any other department in your business, marketing, production, manufacturing, delivery, customer success, your customers will feel it first, your margins will feel it next. And then the sixth and final piece, and arguably for me the most important piece, is culture. What is your sales culture? Have you designed it, or has it just happened organically? And if I had to simplify for me what culture is, it is basically the beliefs that we hold, limiting or enabling, and the behaviors that result from those beliefs. And what we found over the last 3.5, 4 years, since we've cracked the code on this model, we've been stress testing this doctrine. Now, I think we've served something like 450 customers on 4 different continents in about 70 different industries. We now know that this works because we've got clients that are 500,000 in revenue or 2 billion in revenue, and running this ecosystem gets them that predictable, scalable results that we're looking for.
My hypothesis, but I want to bounce this up against your experience because I just got introduced to the model, is the last thing you said of beliefs. I believe you said limiting or enabling,
Yes.
and behaviors resulting from those beliefs. If that is not in the right place, the other 5 fall down.
100% correct. Couldn't agree more. That's 100% correct, Rich, because culture always wins. So you can invest unlimited amount of money, time, energy in trying to mechanically improve your leadership, management, talent pool, enablement, integration. But if the beliefs that you hold in your culture are not ready to receive those, call it upgrades or iterations, the culture will reject it. So I could not agree with you more. In fact, I want to take you on the road with me so I can point to you when we get to this pod and you can just say that, because I stand in front of audiences big and small and I say, I humbly know that what I teach works, not because I say so, but because we have this body of social proof. However, I don't know if it'll work for you because I don't know the culture of your business. If you hear me speak and I talk about these things and you go, oh, that's amazing, I'm inspired, I want to go role practice every week, I want to build a playbook, I want to deploy AI correctly. But the culture that you go back to is people look at you and go, yeah, you know what? All this stuff that you want to work on, that's all well and good, but you can do that with the new people, do that with the rookies. I know my job. I've been in sales 15 years. Just let me do my thing. If that's the culture that you're trying to change, you're going to be pushing a rock up a hill.
Heroics of individuals doesn't scale, you said. What are the implications to that statement?
I talk a lot about A, B, C, and D players as a oversimplified way of kind of categorizing the talent that you have. An A player is somebody with really high core value alignment to your business. So great coachable attitude, wants to do the work, and high competence. A B player is somebody with high core value alignment, so that great attitude, but not yet as good as we would like them to be. And then I talk about C players, who are the most dangerous individuals to have in our business. A C player is high on the competence scale. So they are good at selling or sales management. Let's talk about selling, but they're low on the kind of the attitudinal scale. Now, I'd love to take credit for all of this, but a lot of this stuff comes from a book by Dr. Benjamin Hardy called Who Not What, where he talks about the classification of people. But C players are a danger to us because they make us money. And because they make us money, we often tolerate them. We make excuses for them because they're doing 20, 30, 40, 50% of the revenue in the business. But those are the same individuals we just referenced, Rich, where when I try and now professionalize my sales function, when I try and build my repeatable revenue engine, when I start looking at following a playbook or doing role practice every week or any of the other kind of 10 coaching modalities, it's those C players that dig their heels in and go, it's not for me. I remember that movie Moneyball with Brad Pitt, the baseball movie. There's that one scene where Brad Pitt goes and speaks to a guy called David Justice. He's this 39-year-old ex-Yankee taking batting practice. And he talks to him about this new vision of the franchise they want to build. And David Justice goes, let me stop you there. All this fancy stuff you're talking about is not for me. I know my job. I'm just waiting to get into the Hall of Fame. And then Brad Pitt has to do the hard thing, which we as founders and entrepreneurs and CEOs don't want to do. He has to have what I call the come to Jesus chat. He's got to look this very valuable player in the eye and say, look, I get it, you're valuable. But if you can't be part of the culture, if you can't be a multiplier of other people's effort, mentor them, coach them, be an example, then you can't play here. So the challenge with having people that are heroic or charismatic is that they make us money, therefore we don't want to let them go, but they become the very thing that hold us back from building replicability. And then I have owners saying to me, I'll keep my C players to the side and I'll build my team over here. That's like me going to Starbucks and saying, hi, I'd like a coffee with milk, but I want you to pour the coffee on one half of the cup and the milk on the other half of the cup, and they shouldn't mix. It's just not going to work. It's the same culture for everybody.
I'm sorry. I just flipped to, it's like the smoking section of a restaurant and the tables are right next to each other. Or better 100%. Yet, sorry to be off color, it's like having a peen section in a pool.
You know what? With your blessing, I'm going to steal those because I think they're an even better metaphor that proves the point.
And you said A, B, C, D. I'm left to assume D is low, low.
D is low, and I say a little bit tongue-in-cheek, these are probably good humans, but they're just not for you. And that means you should set them free to go be happy somewhere else. D players, unfortunately, have a little bit of Stockholm syndrome. They know that they're not very good. They know that they're not performing, and they sometimes have low confidence that they're going to perform somewhere else. So they're not going to leave of their own volition. you have to encourage them to leave the nest. And the thing that I think a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs forget is that everybody in your team knows who the C and D players are, and they are waiting for you to act. And I can humbly put my hand up and say, even in the last 2-3 years, I have made the mistake of inviting C players into the business because I wanted so badly to believe that they're not a C player. And I've probably waited longer than I should to move D players on, because we all want to believe that we have that company where we invest from within. We're trying to do the right thing. But unfortunately, sometimes we have to, again, learn from winning sports teams and say, hey, I've only got so many positions in my team. We're trying to win more games than we lose here. I have to do the right thing for the good of the whole organization.
Yeah, but it's so difficult.
It's so
difficult. Rich, do you remember what we used to call C players?
I believe Mavericks.
Mavericks. Yeah, we had names for them. We'd call them Mavericks. And you never wanted to be called a Maverick, because if you were a Maverick, it meant that you were that all-star who did great in sales, but no one wanted to work with, right? You were this wrecking ball that just kind of went and did things. And I started taking offense to it when people would call me a Maverick. I'd be, oh no, I'm not a Maverick. I want to be a part of it. But it's so hard as an entrepreneur with a business when you have this high-performing person. You do want to segregate them and put them off to the side. Okay, you keep doing what you got going on. Yeah. I'm going to go do this over here.
Absolutely.
But it's very difficult. And one of the areas that I see it having a bigger impact is not just the sales team. It's that integration part that you were talking about. And I have this question, Morné, before you answer that. It almost seems like the 6 elements of your doctrine are almost like in a pyramid. You need the core, you need that core value, that culture component before you have the other 5. But then you also need integration. If you don't have integration with operations and a whole bunch of other parts of your business, that's what led you guys to massive success, is massive integration. Yeah. I've definitely dealt with businesses where sales is on an island. And when something comes in that's not good, operations is like, oh, the salespeople over here. And when operations doesn't do good with the job, sales goes, hey, operations, you lost my big account. And it's a lot of finger pointing. What is the recipe for really good integration within sales and the entire company?
Big question. I'm going to try and give you a substantive short answer. I think there's a number of things. So the first thing is, when we talk about everybody in the organization having a sales mindset, that does not mean that we want to turn everybody in the business into salespeople. And I think there's some companies that would really reject that, because there is limiting beliefs often about, I'm not in sales, right? We have clients that are accountants and lawyers and professional services and all engineering companies, and they have no salespeople. So when you talk about sales mindset, they recoil in horror. What I mean is, the customer experience is your marketing. So the first thing that we have to work on from a mindset perspective, from a culture perspective, is the understanding that anybody that touches a customer in any capacity, whether it's a new customer, an existing customer, a long-standing customer, if you touch a customer in any capacity at any time, you are doing one of 2 things. You are building goodwill or you are burning goodwill. There is no middle ground. And if we can adopt that belief in our businesses, it'll change the way that we communicate with customers. I had an organization emailing me this morning. It's an association that does some stuff for my mom who lives in South Africa. They do some stuff around the property where she lives. And they send me a statement. And they said, oh, you guys are in arrears. But it's an incredibly aggressive email. And it's, if you don't pay this, then we'll be forced to take action in 14 days. And I very calmly did a screen grab of a payment that I made weeks ago that's not on their statement. And I just said, could you please take into account that this is in fact not in arrears? But then I think to myself, what needs to happen in the culture of that organization for them to send, as a first touch, a very aggressive, angry email when money is owed? Because the belief is, we already have you as a customer, but you have to pay us contractually. So now if you don't pay on time, we can treat you any which way that we desire. That's the culture of that organization. And they are burning goodwill by chasing me for money. If they just said, hey, we think that you're in arrears, could you help us clarify? But they're not thinking about the fact that every touch is a building or a burning of goodwill opportunity. So that's one of the first things that we need to do. We need to understand that the customer experience is your marketing. You cannot have either a sales and marketing function that goes out and heavily discounts because they believe that currently the market is under pressure and people will only buy at this price. And then they take this anemic under margin deal, throw it over the fence into production or delivery and say, it's not my problem how we make money on that. You guys figure it out. That's going to lead to buyer's remorse because now we don't have the margin to delight this customer. Or what I think is worse, we cannot have a sales and marketing function that allow us to sell our product or service at full margin and then have an apathetic or indifferent delivery model, which I think is even worse, right? That's, I often use car rental examples. Car rental companies have amazing websites about what a great experience you're going to have. And then you go and try and hire a car and see what kind of experience you're actually going to have. Or airlines is another great example, right? So one of the things that we often do just as a technique, when we do weekly role practice, for example, in sales, we always bring one non-salesperson into role practice. So role practice for us is 3 people, not 2. You have somebody in the sales seat, you have somebody playing the prospect or client, and then we have what we call the observer seat. And we always put a non-salesperson in the observer seat, somebody from any other department of the business who does touch customers, but they're not in sales. And then actually we rotate them through all the seats. And what that does is it gives your sales team the opportunity to observe how a non-salesperson speaks to a customer, which oftentimes they go, oh, that's interesting. That didn't sound salesy at all. I could probably learn from that. But it also importantly gives your non-salespeople, your delivery staff, your finance staff, your admin staff, your ops staff, whoever it might be, the opportunity to observe what a sales call actually looks like. And in the thousands of times that we've run role practice now for the customers that we've served, we observe that it builds empathy between these individuals and between these departments because now they actually understand the nuance of what each of them is supposed to be doing in order to create these raving fan customers.
Morné, I love where you went there with the integration of the business to this role practice. And I must say, in my years of entrepreneurship and companies, if there's one thing that I find everybody talks about being extremely beneficial, but everybody hates doing it and doesn't want to do it, is this role playing and role practice. And in hearing you give that example, it almost feels like role practice is a non-negotiable. You need to have role practice in your organization. You should be doing it hundreds of times. You should be doing it over and over again. It goes back to the McDonald's principle of extraordinary systems and processes, right? Is that what you're saying here? Because I do know that makes a lot of people uncomfortable.
Undoubtedly. Again, you guys are speaking my language. I bang this drum every single time I go on stage. And on a yearly basis, I probably have 3,000-4,000 people in my audiences across a year. And I almost every single time ask the question, who in this room does sales role practice at least once a week without exception? And less than 1% of hands go up. And then I just say, look, here's why that's a problem for me. If you look at a winning sports team at any level, high school, college, pro, doesn't matter. Practice is mandatory. Practice is mandatory because we recognize that it is the fastest and best way for us to get better. Now, we hold limiting beliefs as businesses that, you know what, I have a really senior experienced sales team. They've all been in sales for 10 plus years. They don't need to practice anymore. Really? Tiger Woods at his best used to practice for 6 to 8 hours a day. Kobe Bryant at his best, 7 hours of practice a day. When Novak Djokovic was number 1 in the world, they said to him in an interview once, Novak, the thing that we admire most about you is your gift to stay calm in high pressure matches. And Novak said, let me correct you. It's not a gift. I practice my mindset like I practice my serve. This idea that we've had success and now we don't have to practice anymore is an absurdity. This will only really work in an American context, but if you think about the Seattle Seahawks that won the Super Bowl this past February, I wonder, are the Seahawks coaching staff pulling together the team now in the preseason and they're saying, okay, boys, look, we won the Super Bowl. Obviously, our playbook works. Obviously, you all know your jobs. You're all very talented. So why don't we just take a break? Why do we need to run these plays thousands of times before the season starts? You all know how to win. Let's just show up on opening day and we'll just do exactly what we did last year. That's not going to happen because the other teams are working to improve. The environment is changing. The personnel is changing. And the exact same thing is true in sales. The fact that you had success last year does not guarantee success this year. Because look how much the economy has changed in the last few years. Look at the impact that AI is having. Customers are changing all the time. The mindset of the prospects you spoke to last year is different this year because that's just how human beings operate. And the idea that you don't need to practice is incredibly dangerous. Make your mistakes internally. I was having a similar debate with somebody just a few days ago where we were talking about playbooks and they said, Morné, you've convinced me. I'm definitely going to build a sales playbook so that we can practice. I said, fantastic. I'm so glad to hear that. How are you going to build the playbook? I'm just going to sit down with AI and I'm going to build it. And I was like, oh, wow. And he's like, no, I get it. Look, I'm sure that if I built it with you, it would be better. But you know what? If I sit down with AI, it's going to be good enough. I said, that's not even the issue. The issue is a couple of things. Number one, the access to knowledge does not equal mastery. Forget about the fact that AI is going to hallucinate. It's an echo chamber. It's not going to figure out your blind spots. Forget about the deficiencies in building the thing with AI. Let's assume, for the sake of argument, you build a possible playbook with AI. That means nothing. If I took the Seattle Seahawks playbook and I gave it to, I don't want to pick another team because your listeners will be angry, but whoever was last on the league last year, they're not going to win because it's not the playbook that gets you there. It's not the knowledge. It's the journey. You have to struggle through it. You have to work on it. If you've played sport when you were growing up, you didn't sit down and read a textbook about how to play baseball, basketball, football, hockey, whatever it might be. You got out into a field and you struggled with your peers. You had that experience. You made mistakes. You got a little bit better. You ran the reps. So role practice is a non-negotiable because the journey, the struggle is how you get to mastery. And it's how you maintain mastery. How many football games do you have to watch before you get better at playing football? How many times do you have to go to the symphony and listen to those incredible musicians play before you get better at playing the violin? What if I got the first chair violinist to come to the front of the stage after the performance and give you a verbal tutorial on how to play the violin? Does that make you better at playing the violin? Not really. But that's what happens in most sales teams. The sales manager says, hey, I've observed you doing this thing. I heard you doing this. Here's verbally what you should do instead. Now go and do it. That's not how you get better at playing the violin. You have to pick up a violin, kind of suck at it, and then keep going, and then you get better. And if you think that getting good at it then means that you're going to stay good forever, speak to somebody who plays golf and ask them whether if they stop playing for a year, they're still at the same handicap. There is such a thing as skills attrition. So yeah, you've got me going on this. You can see that I'm passionate about it. I will advocate loudly and passionately for the fact that we need to role practice, but I get it. It is awkward. But that goes back to the culture question, Rich, that you brought up. If your culture isn't ready to be uncomfortable, it's going to be very difficult for you to implement something like role practice in your sales team. And that's where maybe AI can help a little bit, and there's software for that. It's never going to be as good as doing it person to person. It's like if I want to get good at tennis, I can get a ball machine to throw me balls or hit a ball against the wall. And yes, I'm getting some practice, but I'm never going to be a competitive player unless I play against another human. AI will help you with some role practice, but it's never going to be the same as doing it with a real human who's unpredictable.
I agree with you, period.
Thank
and I
goodness.
want to push back. And I want to push back.
Okay, go for it.
If I'm in a B2C business,
yes,
and I'm doing 3 to 5 sales appointments per day, do I really need to role practice? I can learn something, and I got another 3 to 5 appointments tomorrow. I actually don't even have a lot of time to do role practice.
Sure.
And I am constantly doing it. So this isn't like we're doing one big sale a week, where I get the analogy and the sports analogy, but to me, it's like, it's almost obvious on a football team. you have a game once a week and you have other days you can practice. What happens when you have 3 to 5 games a day?
So baseball have 162 games a year. Do they still practice?
Between games, right?
Yeah, they still do batting practice. They still do pitching practice. They still do catching practice. They still run their drills because we're always working on something. It's a great counter argument, Rich, and I know you're doing it in good faith, but because there are
and not
businesses,
everybody has 3 to 5 appointments a day,
Sure.
right? And some businesses are seasonal, that it's 3 to 5 appointments a day, and maybe you don't have time to do a lot of role practice
well,
during
let's
these
address the
3
timing
months.
issue
But
then.
but then the rest of the year you can and should.
I guess maybe the question is, what's the formula? What's the formula of reps to game time?
Oh,
love
that.
So the formula, very simply, is it's a minimum of 45 minutes a week. If you don't have 45 minutes a week to do role practice, I honestly don't know who can help you. And the formula is it's 3 rounds of 15 minutes. So what we do is we take your sales team, however big or small, we put them in groups of 3. So if it's a virtual thing, you can put them into breakout rooms on something like Zoom or whatever it is. If it's in person, you just spread them around. Groups of 3, salesperson, prospect or customer, and then your observer. First round of 15 minutes, it's 10 minutes of role practice and then 5 minutes of feedback from the observer. In the 10 minutes of role practice, you get to pick any customer interaction that you want to practice. And that's so many, right? Prospecting activities, discovery call, best questions, objection, preemption, or handling, how to pitch a job, how to close, how to follow up, account growth, customer success. You pick any kind of interaction that you want to simulate. Then you decide, should I also practice the type of interaction that this is? Because a lot of companies are doing face-to-face meetings, they're doing video calls, and they're doing phone calls. And they don't think to practice the different mediums, right? But if you think about this podcast, we're here virtually and we're all well framed and the lighting is pretty good and you can see my hands moving, which is a trust signal. But a lot of sales professionals and companies don't think about the experience that they're creating via video or the experience they're creating via phone call. They only practice in-person meetings. In-person meetings are the easiest because proximity is power. You can see my body language. There's an energetic transfer. And the paralinguistics, the way I use my voice, is much more pronounced. When I'm on video, it's less. And when I'm on phone, it's even less. Imagine a team that's never practiced in the rain and then has to play a playoff game in the rain. How's that going to go? So first we pick the thing that we want to practice. Then we pick how we want to practice it. And then it's 3 rounds of 15 minutes. 10 minutes role practice of something that you pick, 5 minutes feedback from the observer, who, by the way, starts out as a non-salesperson. After the first round of 15 minutes, we all swap places. So now the salesperson becomes the prospect, the observer becomes the salesperson, even if the observer was not in sales, because they're going to practice a customer interaction. We do another round of 15 minutes, and then we swap places again. And I can give the listeners a couple of pro tips. Number 1, you have to sit in all 3 seats in order to get it. You're going to find that if it's salesperson in the hot seat, one-way traffic, they're going to get fatigued and they're probably going to make excuses and not come back the next week. You're also going to find that when you try and do 10 minutes of role practice on anything, they're not going to get to 10 minutes the first few times. They're going to get frustrated and kind of get themselves tied up in knots within 3 to 4 minutes. Please don't save them. Let the thing run its course. Because remember, if you're the sales manager, sales leader, entrepreneur observing the role practice, whatever's happening in front of you in practice, tomorrow when they're in front of a live customer, what happens if it happens again? So let this thing run its course, and only after the observer is given feedback, then you give them coaching. And then the next thing that they should know is, it's going to suck. There's no way that I can get around that. The degree to which it sucks is directly proportional to your culture. If you've built a culture where people go, you know what, I'm excited, man, let's do the work. We do hard things here. It's not going to suck for very long. It's going to be 2-3 times and they're just going to get into it and they're going to love it because they're going to get better fast. If you are listening to this and you're thinking, ooh, I really don't think my people are going to go for this, and then you try and implement it anyway, your resolve is going to get tested. But I always say this, here's the option that I would recommend. If you don't have a sales manager, get yourself a fractional sales coach and then announce that as of next Wednesday at 1 p.m., you're doing role practice for 45 minutes. One of two things is going to happen. Your people are going to show up, grudgingly or otherwise, and they will get better fast. Or you will have more new business sales appointments Wednesday at 1 o'clock than you've ever had, because that will be the excuse they use not to come. It's a win-win for you.
I agree and yield that even if you're running 3 to 5 appointments a day, there's time to find 45 minutes a week to practice, and it's worth it. So thank you for that formula and that explanation on how you do it. If our listeners want to learn more about you or get a hold of you, how would you like them to do that?
Of course. I have two different websites. One for my company that does the implementation of all the stuff that we've talked about, and that is emersesales.com. So EMERSE sales.com. And they can kind of have a look at what we do. The easiest email would be takeaction@emersesales.com. And then if people are interested in coming to masterclasses that I put on as a speaker, I do those virtually every 4 to 6 weeks. They can come to my personal website, which is mornesmit.com, MORNESMIT.com. And then they'll get a bunch of information there on masterclasses that I run, speaking events that I do, both private and public, and they can get more information there.
Thank you, Morné.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Stay tuned as John and Rich unpack today's conversation.
It's not called role play. It's called role practice. And throughout this entire conversation, the thing I love the most about this conversation is almost everything came back to, if you want to have the best sports team in the world, or you even want to win a competition at anything in sports, you got to practice. And every single part of it, your team culture's got to be in place, how it's integrated throughout the organization needs to be in place. It can't just be, hey, we have a playbook and therefore we're good. And the example of the violinist I thought was just hilarious. You can watch a violinist for 10,000 hours. You're not going to get any better at it unless you pick up a violin and practice. But yet, I think we take things for granted. We hire a sales rep because they have really good experience. We put them into the seat and say, go. And maybe we do some observations. Maybe we provide some feedback. But then it's, okay, now you got it. Go. And this idea of 45 minutes every single week, we have a practice. We have a team practice, 45 minutes every single week. Let's go. This is our culture here. That's quite a challenge to every single person listening to this with a company.
All right. I'm going to take a little different look at this. I think there is a let's go, we do hard things thing to it. But I also think there's an underbelly of vulnerability that's necessary in a culture that embraces role practice. Because if you think about across any of the analogies he gave of musicians and sports, and anyone who practices does things wrong. That's the idea of practice. And to do that in public with peers or with supervisors in front of other people, to put yourself in position where you know you're going to do things wrong, there has to be a culture of, and that's okay. You don't have to do everything right. We're all learning. And there's something called confident humility, which is, I'm very confident that I know a lot and there's always more to learn. And there's something in a culture where confident humility needs to be at play for role practice to be absorbed really well.
There's not only that, Rich, you talk a lot about the 5 dysfunctions of a team, and you help leadership teams with those 5 dysfunctions. And the base layer of that pyramid of the 5 dysfunctions of teams is trust, vulnerability-based trust. And I guess it begs to question the entrepreneurs and teams who say, you know what, starting next Wednesday, we're doing 45 minutes a week of this practice. Can it help your organization develop its culture? Because through that practice, they will need to be vulnerable. Through that vulnerability will develop trust. Through that trust will develop maybe stronger relations within the organization, especially as you're bringing people outside of that department to be a part of it. Like the ability to really see what the sales team is going through. If you're in operations or you're in accounting, that could help just really overcome the 5 dysfunctions in a way at the base layer.
I agree. And there's some setup to it that is necessary, where telling those who are coming in, hey, this isn't about having to do it right the first time. This isn't about peacocking or trying to do it better than anyone or trying to not get any feedback. This is about just give it your best shot. Everybody's going to get feedback and everybody's going to learn something they can improve. So I think there's a setup to it, John, that makes it more likely to go where you want to go. Because without that setup, I think there are some cultures where we just say, hey, let's get together Wednesday at 1:00 and let's do role practice. And it's a peacocking competition where everybody just wants to look the best and they're not actually there to learn. So I think there's some couching of it that would help.
Yeah, no doubt. I know, and I don't know what the analogy is in other sports, but I know in hockey, one of the things they say in practice is if you're not going around the corner hard enough and falling and trying to really see how fast you can go around the corner, you're probably not trying hard enough, right? You're just taking it easy, going around the corner so you don't fall and look good. You're not even going hard enough, right? So you have to go hard in practice to get better. That's what you need to do. So love that. If we get off that topic and we start talking about the Emerse Sales doctrine, excellence in leadership, sales management, your talent pool, the right people in the right seats, enablement, helping them answer the one key question, what do I do next? Integration throughout the organization and sales not being on an island, and then the culture, the beliefs and behaviors within the organization. I love your call out too. If you don't have that base layer, that culture, everything else is going to fall apart. And I think he demonstrated that over and over again in this conversation. I highlighted the integration one, which is the fifth one, as being one that I've seen struggle a lot within organizations. We didn't really talk about enablement, the talent pool. We did talk about the talent pool with C players. We did talk about talent pool. Didn't really talk about enablement and sales management or excellence in leadership. Did you have any thoughts on those three other doctrines as relates to this topic?
As I see it, this may not be Morné's philosophy, so I may be riffing in an area that I admit may be counter to where he would go. But I think enablement is a direct derivative of that sales excellence in leadership. The reason I say that is if you have clarity and you talk about what you can control, I think from that you get what's the best thing to do now. Now, I know in the enablement, to know the best thing to do now also includes some prioritization. And I think so it starts with clarity, focus on what you can control. Now, what to focus on within what you can control, I think yields enablement. So I see 1 and 4 kind of going hand in that way.
Yeah, I like that. The other thing we talked about too that I wanted to touch back on was this ordinary systems and processes. You need extraordinary people. If you have extraordinary systems and processes, you could get away with ordinary people and still have good results. I do see that playing into why EOS is so good for companies and traction, like putting in really good systems and processes for everything. But I do see a lot of companies that succeed because they just got that extraordinary lightning strike, whether it be the person or the right customer or whatever it may be. And they really don't focus on that systems and processes. And that goes way beyond sales. Sales are really important, but you also need the backside of the house. I've seen, as you've seen, a lot of companies that do really good at the systems and processes and sales, bring in the business, it goes right back out the back door. We had a podcast guest that talked about that, right? The first 100 days of the customers, and stop selling until you make sure you retain your customers. And the other thing I liked about what he talked about here, I can't remember where it was in the segment, is the customer experience is your marketing. And a lot of people say, everybody's in sales here. Everybody's in sales. And he kind of said, no, that's not really the idea. It's not everybody's in sales. Sales is sales and operations and operations, but everybody is in client experience. And your client experience is your marketing. And the better marketing you do, the more repeat business you're going to have, the better your retention is going to be. Everything just kind of stays there. Stop treating your customers like you already have them.
Last thing I want to highlight is a nuance about Morné that I think would easily go overlooked. At one point, you asked a question, and his response was, good question. I'm going to try to give you a substantive short answer. There's something to, as leaders, trying to give substantive short answers that I think is really important. And while he wasn't always short, and I think that's okay, it was always substantive. But he had a knowing focus on, I'm going to try to give a substantive short, and he just ripped that off. That's in his mind as a communicator and as a leader. I want to give substantive short answers. Who wants to give a short answer that isn't of a lot of value, or too long of an answer that people lose the messaging in? So I think that's a type of thing that is going to stick with me at least throughout the rest of the day and maybe this week, that I want to do my best to focus on what Morné was focused on there, is giving substantive short answers and then allow the conversation to open up from there.
Maybe you can bring that to our practice session next Wednesday for 45 minutes, because certainly that's been practiced.
Yeah.
Right? And I think he practices what he preaches. So I wouldn't be surprised if when you interact with your team like that, and you're having these practice sessions, you're going to learn things just like you just learned from his communication skills. You're like, wow, I'm going to grab that the next time I'm with this customer. That's a great way to respond and really show that you're listening. And so there's a lot of things that we gain in practice that we often overlook. And so it just brings back the value of that important skill. So great conversation here with Morné. I hope you, the listener, grabbed a lot from this, just like Rich and I did. We'll see you next week on the Entrepreneurs United podcast.